Alright, so I've done this story before, but I figured it'd be kind of fun to do it again in like a little more updated version of this fanfiction idea, and that is a crossover I've always wanted to write, but I don't think I'll ever be able to, because while one character is public domain, the other character for some reason is not public domain, even though he, for all intents sure should be, and it's Tarzan's for some reason is not public domain. I don't get it. But yeah, so Tarzan versus Dracula. You may be thinking that a crossover between Tarzan and Dracula would make no sense, but really, like, when you think about it, like, they both exist in the books, they exist in roughly the same time period, but there's actually a neat little parallel I always thought would be kind of fun between the two, and that is Dracula and Tarzan are both savages at heart, and they have this like veneer of nobility to them. Like, obviously Tarzan was raised in a kingdom of the wild and was of noble blood, but in deep down he always knows he's the wild man, whereas Dracula is a monster who rules the night and dresses up in this veneer of, again, a nobleman. So I just thought that that's a neat correlation, that they're both like hiding their truth selves underneath under a noble disguise. Plus, it's Lord of the Apes versus Lord of the Vampires. Like, that was kind of the tagline would be for this, if I could make this in a real book. It's Lord of the Apes versus the Lord of the Vampires. So let's talk a bit about this story. So let's really like dive into this story and really get into what it's about. So this story is basically this story is basically set like 10 years before the events of Dracula, which the book is set in real time at that point, which was 1897. And here it's set 10 years prior, and essentially what has happened is that winter has come to London, and Jane and Tarzan have returned from London back to... they've left London back and returned to Africa, mostly because Tarzan has no love for for English winter. Like, he has no love for it. Like, he's tried it before, and he's like, no, I just want to go, let's just spend our winter in Africa, So, roughly that same time when they arrive, another boat has shown up, and Tarzan is like, it piques his interest because they said it's carrying the plague, and what has happened, like, Tarzan, of course, is like, I'm Lord Greystoke, what's going on here? And the investigators basically tell them, well, the boat was having some kind of plague, but it's just a cargo ship, it's nothing important. And he's like, well, what was on board the ship, may I ask? And he's like, boxes of earth and he's like, where did it come from? And he's like, the boat was coming from Romania, specifically Transylvania. And Tarzan's like, okay, that's weird, but whatever, I'm on vacation, it's not my problem. And roughly the same time, he notices because by the time they get here, it's at night, he notices a large bat fly out from the boat, and he's like, I know all my bats, my African bats, and that is no bat from Africa. So he is perturbed by it, because he's like, oh, it's an invasive species, great, that's going to destroy the African wildlife. That's as if the white people haven't done that already, great, that's great, but I can't do anything about it, it's already gotten away. What damage and Jane's like, what damage could one bat do to an entire ecosystem? He's like, be surprised. Anyway, so there's a party, a gala, because there are like English noblemen who are staying in Africa, and they're like excited at the idea of Lord Greystoke, because they know he's Tarzan, or like Tarzan, the great jungle man who's lived in this country. We'd be honored to have Lord Greystoke here. And he's like, okay, sure. So while this party is going on, the announcement of a Count Dracula has been echoed, and Dracula enters. And already, like, Tarzan's like, he smells funny. Like, I've been around, like, he smells like death. Like, he just smells like straight up death. And I was like, I can't put my finger on it. But Jane's like, he's from Romania. It's a strange country, he may be odd, but show some decorum of respect. And Dracula, of course, goes to Tarzan. He's like, the wild man. I've heard so many tales about you. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Count Vlad Dracula, at your service. And Tarzan's like, Cool. So the two basically have like a conversation of like Dracula talks about being a soldier and fighting in great battles, and he basically like talks down to Tarzan because he's like, the jungles of London, I've heard beautiful things about them, but they must be so different from the trees you swing upon. And Tarzan's like, I get your meaning, sir. So they're having a bit of a dick measuring contest, and it also spills over when Dracula kind of makes a few like flirts with Jane, and that's when Tarzan's like, all right, that's enough. As they're leaving the party, Tarzan also notices, but he keeps to himself because he's like, that's not right. But he notices in a mirror not too far away that Dracula has no reflection. So he's like, okay, that's a red flag, so I'm going to figure this out. So he overheard during the conversation that Dracula has a estate in not too far away. Like, he's purchased land and plans on living in Africa. He's moved. He wants to move out of Romania and into like somewhere with a larger, like more leg room, essentially. So Tarzan goes out into the world. Yeah, he goes out, breaks into Vlad's home and discovers, obviously, like, there's nothing here, and then he eventually finds the box of earth that were supposed to be in that cargo ship, and one's a coffin. Dracula, of course, springs out and just beats the shit out of Tarzan, because Tarzan's like, obviously he's been to the Earth's core and fought dinosaurs, he's encountered, dinosaurs, giant apes, expert hunters, and wild men. He's never encountered something with such barbaric strength and, like, just speed. Like, he's just completely taken aback, and he barely gets away from both Dracula and his vampire underlings. It's then when Dracula basically pulls a Bane on him and just beats the shit out of Tarzan in their first go-around. But Dracula Tarzan gets away with Dracula's underlings pursuing him, and who saves him is Van Helsing. Obviously, in the original Dracula novel, it had been stated that Dracula and Van Helsing knew each other, so I wanted to add to that. So Abraham Van Helsing finds Tarzan, rescues him, brings him to his little base of operations, and tells him, look, what you're fighting is a vampire, it's dangerous, and I know why he's here. He came to Africa to turn the entire population he wants to make Africa into a continent of the undead. And he's like, that makes no sense. It's, the people would rise up. He's like, would they? They're under the boot of a British Empire and several other European powers who give no shits about them, and they're so far from each other, and even if help would come to them, which it wouldn't, no one could stop him from spreading his disease across the continent, and it will truly be a dark continent if we allow Dracula to get a foothold in Africa in any way. So, of course, Tarzan, with Africa being his true home, as he calls it, is like, all right, I will join you, Abraham. We will fight this evil together. At the same time, Dracula's already, like, enslaving the populations. He's getting all this power behind him, and he's seducing Jane, Dracula, Tarzan's gone missing. I don't know what's happened, and he's already biting. He's not infected her yet, but he is, like, draining her blood and planning on making her into one of his new brides. So Tarzan and Tarzan and Van Helsing unite. They go out, fight their way through several of their forces, and this time around, Tarzan lures Dracula into the heart of the jungle, where he's already. It's like kind of like Arnold fighting the Predator, where Tarzan in here knows he can't fight Dracula in a head-on fight. Like, he's it's no wild. At the end of the day, like, he comments, like, at the end of the day, behind that all the nobility and all that superiority you have, Count, you're still an animal, and I'm accustomed with killing animals. So Tarzan basically uses, like, traps and versions of, like, a vampire hunt, of, like, how to stop a vampire. Like, he sprays, like, a mist of garlic from a trap. He drops Dracula into a pit filled with wooden stakes and nearly kills him. He also, like, lures him into a room full of crosses. It's he basically has to, like, build traps to to fight Dracula and weaken him. But of course Dracula fights his way through these traps and gets a hold of Tarzan And he's like, all of this was stupid. You can't stop me, dumbass. And Tarzan's like, you're right. I wasn't trying to stop you. I was trying to delay you. And he's like, delay me for what? He points to the sky. That. So the sun starts coming up. Dracula freaks out and flees. His skin's already burning. But he manages to get away, find his way on a boat, and flee. But now he knows that he can never return to Africa because now, like, Tarzan's beaten him. So, yeah. But Dracula, as he's returning, he's slunk back home. He's already thinking, maybe I was thinking to, what was I thinking? A whole continent? What the hell was I thinking? This plan will work, but I need a smaller space. And he's like, I hear London is beautiful during the summer. So, of course, that gives him the idea to plan for, what would happen in his book. So, in his original novel. So, there you go. Anyway, so there you go, guys. That is pretty much Tarzan versus Dracula in a nutshell. Hope you all enjoyed this. If you haven't already, just like, share, subscribe the video, that whole spiel. If you haven't already, go check out my Patreon. I just did my review for Antlers, and I just posted another faction war on there, so hope you all enjoyed that. But other than that, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.